Willie the Duck is now enshrined in glass.
Is he?
At the bottom of a showcase at the Pittsburgh Children's Museum on the north side, along with some of the most beautiful puppets and marionettes you've ever seen, a collection of Margot Lovelace. I gave the duck, one of the ducks, to them to put in the showcase.
Oh, that's neat.
That's nice done.
That's nice.
We have one now from Highland Park. You're on the air.
Hi, Ricki.
Hi.
I would like to ask you if you could fill us in and give us some more background on what happened to Copper.
Well, Copper was a wedding gift from my husband because he knew the one thing I wanted more than anything else in the world was a dog because my mother worked and I could never have a dog. And so she let me work for her 14 years of her life, and she was a great joy. After 14 years, she passed away. She had had already 2 heart attacks, and the third one took her life. And she's been a great part of our lives, and we miss her very much, but she brought a lot of joy to children and to me and to a lot of my friends at Channel 4 who tolerated a dog running around the station stealing donuts. She loved chocolate donuts. So we all miss our Copper.
I wish Don would have had dogs rather than what he brought into the studios periodically.
Snakes and,
can you imagine
monkey.
today, can you imagine just the television management that you work for today, and we all do, allowing full-grown lion or a cheetah or a couple of llamas, or you name it, into the studio. And we had a full-grown lion that belonged to Len Kaiser. His name was Lucky, and it was tame. Don't worry about Lucky. You can get teeth.
Yeah.
We hooked
him to a 1,700-pound fearless Houston dolly. Remember that?
Yeah. Houston Fearless camera dolly.
Oh, my Lord.
Clear across the studio.
And the stagehands were climbing the ropes.
And Al Jablonski climbed up on the camera, and I don't know where everybody else went, but that was Lucky. Good. And nobody cared. And also, if you will go to Channel 2 today and look way up in there, you'll see a great big thick rope way up in the grids. We used to hang down for the kids on Safari when we had a live show. And the kids would come in and we'd introduce them that way. They'd get up on a platform, grab a hold of the rope, and swing in. And here's little Ricki Wertz. And yeah. Well, one day, we got this very heavy young scout. And here comes
Clunk, that was it.
The rope went back up. They never did bring it back down again.
Eleanor will remember this.
We could not, well, no, I'm not faulting management today. I'm faulting our system. Liability.
Oh, you couldn't do it.
Sure.
Couldn't do it.
You can't.
Or you couldn't take kids out in the open like we used to. I used to take kids in the woods. We do cookouts and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Well, one of them got sick once.
Right.
And the father says, gee, you know what he made him sick? He says, I don't know either. That's the end of it.
Those birds.
Today, they own the station and me and everything, you know.
Yeah.
I was going to say to Eleanor.
Well, Sterling H. used to throw firecrackers at my pet crows. Then I took my pet crows home, and my wife chased them around for about a week and a half all over Scott Township. The school would call. Oh, Bonadon's crows are messing the teacher's desk in room 3. Would you come and get them? And you couldn't get them, yeah. Finally, one of the Scott Township policemen said, we had to put them to sleep, kids. What did you put them to sleep with, officer? 357 Magnum.
Oh, John! Oh, that's awful.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, you have a story.
A few moments ago, when Don was closing off a show on tape, there's a fellow that we can't forget here tonight. I guess I'm sort of proud of him because he started on my show. But a little bit of piano was heard when you closed off the show a few moments ago, and I think you'll concur with me, as will Joe Negri, our dear mutual friend. One John Costa is not here tonight.
Well,
but he's only one of the world's great pianists. I'm saying the world's great pianist.
Yes, he is.
Amen.
And we called him and we said, you come back, and he said, not on my vacation. And John, you would come back in January from Florida. Can you imagine that?
Did he say anything dirty in Italian? He says a lot of dirty things in Italian.
Yes,
Yes, he does.
Yes, he
but I
does.
never did understand Italian, so I just kept smiling.
Okay.
And we got along fine.
The other thing that Bill says, and I just want to amen that so much, because I spent 7 delightful years in the company of Johnny Costa, and one person tonight who really wants to bring greetings to this crowd, and I think she's one of the most marvelous people I'll ever have the pleasure of working with in all my life, and that's Marcy Lynn.
Oh,
The Marshall and Fennel Pew.
Sure. Oh,
And
how wonderful.
Marcy and I, of course, started Daybreak with Johnny Costa.
Sure.
And we, in 6 weeks, started to beat Garroway, and then never relinquished our rating lead. We're shown here eating a ratings cake. That's Marcy on the left. We beat Today on NBC for 6.5 straight years.
Wow.
And that was every morning John Costa playing something.
Oh, yeah,
and Marcy
he's so
coming up
great.
with some delightful things. She was the first woman, by the way, Marie, to interview, do a series of prison interviews behind the wall.
Why are you telling me this?
So you can go to there and find out what it was.
Okay, we have a
But
Highland Park
she really
question
wanted me
for
to
you.
bring this.
For you, Don. There's a person from Highland Park with a question for Don, and they've been waiting. Highland Park, you're on.
Don, you
Yes.
mentioned the lion a little while ago. Would you tell the story about the time the lion got the tail caught in the revolving door at Gateway Center?
I don't know that I want to
God.
hear that. That
Oh,
sounds
yeah, that's,
horrible.
Be a mad one.
what do you do? You know, you can imagine.
Anything he wants.
You can't, you back up, you're gonna get bit.
Wow.
We just kept on going. That's all we could do. Just keep on going, you know. Oh, he was not happy about that.
No.
And then we bought a
You
full-grown.
caught your tail in a revolving door.
Yeah, you wouldn't feel too good either.
We had a full-grown mountain lion who was reluctant to go back to the car, so we picked him up. I picked up his tail, and Len picked up his head, and we carried that 200-and-some-pound mountain lion all the way across Gateway Center. And people said, "Is he dead?"
Just
No,
confused.
he's lazy. He's not dead.
Marion has Ellie over there with a story.
Adam, to tell one quick story. Channel 11, after a playoff game in the World Series, we are all leaving the newsroom. We are on our way to the studio, and Jan Hutchins asks you a question.
Oh, my.
I don't know that I can tell that
Yeah,
story.
you can
Oh,
say
do,
it. It's
do.
educational
Come on.
television. You
Yes.
can say that.
What did
I can?
ask you?
Yes.
It did not cost Jan Hutchins his job, so how
It didn't cost you yours.
No, but it came close.
Maybe mine.
Jan, at that time, was relatively new to television, although he had certainly been on the air for several years. It was a playoff game with Cincinnati for the division title, or for the
It's just when the late Bob Moose threw the wild pitch.
when Bob Moose threw the wild pitch. Bob Moose threw the wild pitch at the bottom of the whatever, and we lost the game. It was just,
It hit the plate,
It was just
bounced
an
over the
awful,
catcher, and the
awful
run
ending
scored, and we lost.
to the game. Just an awful way to finish out the season. Hutchins turned to
I
me
wouldn't say
and
that
said,
either.
"You don't think I should?"
Well,
I don't think I should either. Common sense dictates
Can
to
I
me.
see?
Let me just say this.
I'll do it. I'm one and done. I'm used to that kind of
He
stuff.
you're
turned to
into
me and
that.
said, "Do you think on a night like this I could say, 'Boy, what a shitty way to lose a ball game'?" And I said, "I think a night like this you probably could." I didn't think he was serious. And we went on with the 6 o'clock news. And, "Good evening. What a shitty way to lose a ball game." And I stared straight ahead. I thought, oh my God, he didn't really say that, did he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he
And
did.
then the door opened in the studio, and By Williams, who was the news director at the time, came roaring in. And as soon as Jan was done, they hauled him down to the front office, and they said, "That was terrible. You can't talk like that on the air." He said, "Lynch told me it was all right." So they hauled me down. And they said, "Did you tell him he could say what shitty way to lose the ball game?" I said, "I never thought he would do it." And I had a mortgage to pay and 2 children and a wife to, and I thought, my God, there it goes, I've lost my job. Well, as it turned out, I didn't.
So those of us
Thanks, Eleanor.
Those of us who were reporting in the 60s, there was someone in our audience who played a very big part in many of the stories we covered. It was Jim Slut, who was
Oh,
Pittsburgh
what a
police
wonderful man. Jimmy
superintendent.
Slusser, great chief of police, and great man.
Today, by the way, Jim was named to the Pittsburgh Police Hall of Fame.
Well,
right.
great honor.
But I want to tell a story about him.
Jim.
There was a story that broke one day about a man, a man who climbed the 6th Street Bridge, I think it was 6th or 7th Street Bridge, and he had a gun and he was shooting. It was a very dangerous assignment. I remember Bill Burns at it also, hiding behind the cars. But anyway, we all flocked to the 6th Street Bridge to cover this story, and this man, he'd wait like every 5 or 10 minutes, and he would just whip out this gun and shoot at the crowd. And Jim, he could have ordered his officers to shoot the man down, but he had more compassion, as he always did in what happened here. And he just waited it out. He knew the kinds of bullets that were coming at us and so forth, and he knew that they wouldn't kill you. But anyway, at some point, Mike Levine and his talking machine goes over to Jim, and he says, "Superintendent, would you say from this man's behavior up there that there's something wrong with him?" And Jim said, "No, Mike," he's as normal as you are.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Oh, our buddy.
I'll say it again, Jim.
Huh? Bill Burns only said he was it.
Remember Chicken Hill, Superintendent?
Yeah.
Chicken Hill.
Remember Chicken Hill?
You all covered Chicken
He was
Hill
yelling at some
practically.
officer. There was a guy standing, and the guy was standing like this, looking up, and these cops were behind their cars, and the cars were parked, and the two guys were up on the hill, the culprits. And there was some fella standing beside another officer down there. And the Superintendent Slessor yelled, "Get that man down." So these two got down, and Slessor yelled again, "Get him down lower." He was a civilian. And the officer yelled back to Jim, "He can't, Superintendent. His buttons are in the way."
Bad news.
Bad.
Yes. We have a call on the phone? No, we didn't have a caller on the phone. Okay, they're getting questions over there. For those of you who are calling in and wondering if you're going to be on the air, a few of the calls are being selected, but we are taking all your questions, and we will, if we don't get to answer them as the dialogue goes on here where the answer just naturally will surface, then we will get back to you as soon as possible with any answer that we can possibly find for you following the show. So that could be for maybe a few days. Give us time to kind of sort through them and write you a letter. But we'll be back. We're going to take a break now. Again, stay tuned for us because we'll be back with more stars. And for all of you that are between, I'd say 25 and 35 or 40, you're going to like this next part coming up. We'll see you.
Don't touch that dial. We'll return with Josie Carey, Joe Negri, Hank Stoll, Paul Shannon, and more of Pittsburgh's original TV stars. You didn't touch that dial, did you? Good. Here's more of Pittsburgh's original TV stars. When baby boomers were old enough to change channels, Pittsburgh stations responded with a boom in kids' shows. At the forefront, Josie Carey in Children's Corner. It hit the air on WQED in 1954 and ran for 7 years. Handling puppets on the other side of the wall was the show's producer, Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers to the rest of us.
Do you ever take it off?
It's sort of a frontispiece for me.
Do you ever take it off?
Well, Jones, I'll be seeing you.
No,
you want to shut me off, all right? That's a good girl. Goodbye, everybody. Grand to see you again. Bye.
Escape.
Josie Carey also commuted to South Carolina for another children's show, 340 episodes in all. In 1962, her demand peaked. Mornings, it was KDKA and Josie's Storyland with Sterling Yates. Afternoons, back to WQED and Children's Corner with Fred Rogers. Puppets were a favorite with children. Perhaps two of the best known in Pittsburgh were Rodney and Knish.
Try easing it off to the right so we'll miss that truck, okay?
What truck?
These drivers don't show much respect for sailboats on the parkway, do they?
Knish is the mop top, born in 1952 on Mitzi's Kitty Castle. Rodney was better known as Rodney C. Hackenflash. Hank Stoll later had his own show and a little something called Saturday Night Instead of the Movies. He packed up his brand of slapstick in 1963 and headed for Los Angeles.
And the reason I'm standing here is because when the show was put together and timed, it was 45 seconds short. Thank you.
One of his sidekicks on the Hank Stoll Show was jazz guitarist Joe Negri. He doubled as both musician and entertainer. He was musical director at Channel 4, a regular on the John Reed King Show. But nationwide, he is best known as Handyman Joe, the fix-it guy who just so happens to play guitar on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. If Joe Negri was versatile, one man over at WTAE was a triple threat, even a quadruple threat. From scene design to directing, from camera to floor directing, Paul Shannon could do it all. Not very well, mind you, but he could do it. What he really did, though, was host Adventure Time, weekday afternoons at 3:30. Those brownies in the peanut gallery were Paul's rooters. Shannon also hosted the Three Stooges show. He took to them, they took to him, in their own little way. And Shannon wound up in their last film, The Outlaws Is Coming. Still, he always reminded the little stooges at home, don't imitate them. Nobody could imitate Shannon's popularity. His Adventure Time ran from 1958 to 1975.
Then comes the camera.
And now we're back with you with an era that's very dear to my heart and very dear to a certain kind of age group out there in our greater Pittsburgh audience, because this was the era of the baby boomers. These little baby boomers came along, and every television station was after what we called in the ratings, how many homes reached. And the way you reached those homes was to go after the children, the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children that were out there, and there surfaced all these creative children's shows, because up until that point, there were no children's shows in television. And so this era spawned a way to respond to all of the baby boomers out there. And we have so many to cover. We have 4 of the leading ones here with us tonight. But we also are going to pay homage to, of course, we already mentioned Captain Jim. We have Ida Mae and Happy, who were part of that, and Janie Bram with Romper Room. We were talking about By Williams earlier. Remember him?
The Mickey Mouse
Club.
Right,
the Mickey Mouse Club. And here he is, top management and very head honcho, you know, and here we are talking about, but he was, you know, good businessman. He knew how to respond to the baby boomers back in those days, and By did that. And then we had, of course, Chiller Theater with Chilly Billy. And so there were a lot of them that came along. And I'm sitting here next to Josie, and Josie, you were really, I guess, the first. You really were for
Yes,
getting
I think so. Children's Corner started out in 1954, and we were the second television station on the air. Channel 3 it was, or now it's KDKA, was on by itself for a good long time, and then Channel 13 came into being. And Children's Corner, I think, was the very first successful program that they did. I want to say something first before I forget. We were paying tribute to Johnny Costa a few minutes ago. Well, I don't know how many of you remember that one of his claims to fame was he was Indian Mary on our Funsville program. And because Johnny had such a volatile personality, we couldn't let him talk. You didn't dare let him say a word. This is a children's program.
Cigar out of his
we
mouth,
couldn't.
Too. I mean,
he had the cigar. We put a
cigar.
straw hat on him, and we put braids, and we didn't know whether to make him a man or a woman. So we put a quilt around him, and he had a little Celeste.
Yeah,
Celeste?
little Celeste.
Yeah, and he answered us by playing, you know, notes on the Celeste. Because when he opened his mouth, you had no idea what was going to come out.
That's true. That's
and
true.
the children loved him. Indian Mary was one of the most popular characters that we had in local television.
Right.
And that was our Johnny.
Well, of course, I have to, because I have a great love for public television, say public television again led the way, yes, with our Children's Corner, and then, of course, it became Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah, Children's Corner was on for 7 years.
Then you went to KDKA.
I went to KDKA, and Fred went to the seminary, Fred Rogers. Yeah, and then he went to Canada, and I stayed with KDKA for 8 years. Right. And I did a lot of good work with Johnny and Sterling Yates. He was Mr. Wrinkle on a program called Josie's Storyland.
Right. Sure, Josie's Storyland.
And that was a lot of fun, working live in the morning with those two.
Now, we're talking 50, Yeah, I'll bet. How many coffees before you can handle those two? Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, knowing both of them. Yes, you're quite a woman there, Josie Carey. You know that.
We went from that program to another program called Funsville. That's the one Indian Mary was on. And then there were other things like Wing Ding, there were clubs, and Santa Claus. That was a fun show. I don't know if you remember that. That was on 10 minutes a day in the Christmas season.
In the Christmas season.
And we had Sterling Yates and Ed Chauncey.
As Santa.
Yes,
Marcy Lynn and I
Santa.
played Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yes.
Nancy Fingal was the
Nancy,
Snowflake
sure.
Fairy. Yeah, and this was a 10-minute program with 5 people talking at once. You know, I don't think any of us ever finished a sentence.
You know, Josie, you're one of the best talkers I have ever met. But on that show,
I was the quiet one.
You had trouble.
Well, they wouldn't let me talk for a while. They put a key on my back and made me a tin soldier, and they wound me up. So I had to be quiet unless I was wound up. And if they didn't want me to talk, they didn't wind up my key.
That's funny. Well, Joe, your career as a children's person was just a very brief part of a very varied career.
I don't know exactly how it ever happened, but you know, we were talking about. We mentioned some of the people that used to run the stations in those times, and I can remember Tad Reeves at KDKA and Frank Snyder at WTAE particularly. And you've got to give credit to those guys. I mean, you know, Frank Snyder looked at me and he said, "I'm going to put you on that kids show." Don't ask me why. He did, and it worked. And then I met up with. Well, like you, I started with you in the morning.
Well, I thought Frank Snyder had outstanding taste. Personally, he hired me.
Actually, I was on the station to play music.
Right.
And there were so many shows going on, and I played your show in the morning,
right.
And then I would play on Hank's show in the afternoon, and then when Paul would take a vacation or something, I would go on and do Adventure Time. So I really bounced around.
The incredible thing about it is, as musical director, you would sing a song and you would play your guitar. And then occasionally you would let Kanish and Rodney sing. And you would teach them how to sing.
Yeah.
But I still can't sing.
And yet Kanish sang.
But Kanish sang,
You
yeah.
are weird, Hank Stoll. You know that. No, but you know what? We miss Kanish. We were hoping that Kanish
I
would
have
be
to
here. Where is
confess,
Kanish?
Kanish is home in Connecticut and he's watching the house.
How old is Kanish?
How old is Kanish? 42. Kanish was born in 1951. Or no, 52, when Jack Tolan, then married to Mitzi Steiner, said, "I understand you do puppets." I said, "Yeah." And meantime, I had done puppets in Dayton, Ohio. And they said, "Can you show us your puppets?" I said, "Yeah, when?" "Monday." And this was a Friday. Well, they're in Dayton, Ohio, and they're owned by the Crosley Broadcasting Corporation, not me, because I relinquished control because they were created under their aegis, whatever. Saturday and Sunday, I made puppets. And showed up Monday morning with a set of puppets. Yeah, I can do puppets.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were born on a weekend.
Well,
and that
that's
was
the way it
1952.
was.
That's the way it was.
Daniel Tiger was born on the air.
On the air.
I beg your pardon.
Right. We went on the air, and we had a clock on the back of the set. They had just drawn pictures on the back of the set, and we were going to get a little bird to come out. And we were so busy getting that program put together, we didn't have time to find a bird to come out of the hole in the clock. And Fred had gotten a little hand puppet as a gift at a dinner that Dorothy Daniel, who was putting the station together, had given us as just kind of a thank you for all your work 2 days before we went on the air. And because we didn't get a bird to come out, Fred just took Daniel and put Daniel through the hole. And the bird was supposed to say, "It's 5:02 and Columbus discovered America in 1492. And go back in again." It was like a cuckoo, and he would do cuckoo or whatever. And since we didn't have time to get a bird, Daniel said that, went back in, and that's how Daniel was born.
Lord. Well, Paul Shannon, with your career, I mean, you were an announcer, you were a talk show host, you were just a little bit of everything. How did you ever end up Nosmo King, sir?
Nosmo King.
Nosmo King. Did you tell everybody, in case they don't know, how you ended up naming him Nosmo King? You talk about creativity.
Nosmo King started many years ago in Crafton. When I was growing up, we had a thing about changing words or putting words together. And the sign "No Smoking" became Nosmo King.
Uh-huh, right.
Yeah.
And
I understand that the name Nosmo King has become very popular in Pittsburgh. Again. Because there's a musical group called Nosmo King.
Is there really? I didn't know that, Paul.
I heard this the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things that impressed me most about you when you did Adventure Time was how you could memorize all those Cub Scout and Brownies names.
Oh, sure.
I mean, this is no lie. You could go, and how many would you have in an audience?
40 or 50.
40 or 50 would sit in the audience. He would meet them once and go right down there and be able to say every one of their names.
You want to hear something?
It took a lot of work.
I had to inherit that.
Yeah,
I had to do that. And I said, "You're crazy. I'll never do that." And I learned to do it too.
He gave you that.
There's a trick to it.
Did they ever switch places on you, the
No,
kids?
but you tried to teach me how to play the
guitar.
The guitar.
Right.
And I didn't do very well under your instructions. So I ended up with the piano, the player piano, where you pump with your feet.
You were very creative. You pumped better than anybody I ever saw. Boy, that old foot would go, and we got a lot of music out of there. Yeah. But that was true.
Do you know, Ricki, I don't want to interrupt,
No,
but
go ahead.
you've been talking to all of us about shows that we do and that we have done. And I happen to remember very well a show that I did with you. And I think Jim Weiner, Jim, where are you? I think he has something that he might want to show you.
This is your show.
Yeah, no, this is...
The naughty lady of Shady Lane has hit the town like a bomb.
Ricki Wertz has come a long way since Tarnow. That was a game show out of St. Petersburg, Florida. Not only did Channel 4 love her, they loved her name. She starred in Ricki and Mickey, Ricki Presents Magoo, Ricki Goes to the Zoo, Ricki Reports. But her two best-known series were Junior High Quiz and Ricki and Copper. Each day she led children over the bridge and in 9 years interviewed over 14,000 kids. I know, I was there. I played guitar for her. Her presence on air was deemed critical by station management. When a blizzard hit Pittsburgh, Channel 4 even brought in Ricki and Copper by cab, all the way from Westmoreland County.
Can't you see that it's love? Can there be any doubt? When there is day, it's day out.
She could belt out a pretty good tune, and when Linda Ellaby said, "On local news, you ride the elephant," Ricki did it for us. And where else could a TV personality be the wholesome kids show hostess by day, then wear lingerie and be the sexy, sealy weather girl by night?
Okay, Jim Weiner, our producer. I don't even know where he got all that stuff.
It's good
He
stuff.
brought back memories. Thank you, Joe.
You know,
Yeah.
Ricki, I performed many musical tasks on many different shows, but one of the most demanding things I ever had to do was play for those kids on the Ricki and Copper show.
Oh, with
those
they were
five children
so
that would come in with their songs or their joke. And you used to always sort of tease me. You'd say, "Well, Mr. Music's not doing too well on that one."
He didn't even find you on that one, and your Joe would glare at
I'm trying to find a key, a
Right.
pitch.
Oh, well, I have here from Mary Lou Wade, and her husband is with Post-Gazette, and of course QEX does the Post-Gazette news every night. Her card from the Kanish Good Kid Club, and this has the 8 rules. Do you remember, and do you still follow this? Hank Stoll,
Yeah.
I will always be a good
Excuse me,
sport
don't
when
mix up
playing
7 and 8.
with my friends. I wasn't even going to touch on 7, but since you brought it up, I will go to bed on time.
And 8 is, what's 8?
8 is I will always be a good sport when playing with my friends.
Don't mix them up.
I thought age was going to mellow you. It just made you worse.
You know,